Welcome to my new podcast, Why Didn't Anyone Tell Me This? With my guests, we are discussing health issues with an emphasis on reproductive health, answering your questions you may have, and debunking some of the many myths around our health. And today, it's a great pleasure to be talking to racing car driver Toby Trice, Racing For Fertility. Toby began karting with Russ Mead to help him overcome depression and give him a new focus and a chance to escape from dealing with fertility issues. In 2019, Toby started a campaign to raise awareness for fertility with the goal to end the stigma of fertility through motorsport. And the same year, he claimed his first podium at Donington Park. Welcome, Toby. Great to see you.
Joyce, thank you so much for having me. It's an absolute pleasure to join you today, and I'm really looking forward to chatting all things fertility. It's it's obviously a topic that I'm very, very passionate about, having gone through my own journey. Like you just said, I'm really keen to help sort of end the stigma and taboo, get guys talking, and ultimately get guys checked, tested, and treated, so that hopefully more couples can have babies. That's the bigger plan of the campaign, I guess.
Yeah, that's fabulous, and we'll talk all about that. And there's unfortunately only a handful of you, but at least we have got some men who are in the spotlight, like you and a few others, who now are really helping get this conversation going for men. So it's so important, and that's why I wanted to have you on my podcast today. So let's start by talking about your amazing racing career, because it's really great. I was reading up about it. It's really great. I'd love you to tell our listeners.
Oh yeah, so it's been a bit of a mad rise, really. I mean, from a very young age, I grew up with my uncle at a local go-karting track and banger racing track, where I kind of watched him and always wanted to be in the car, and used to get on their nerves while they were kind of fixing his car up, and I'd be sitting in the passenger seat or in the race seat, pretending to drive it. So I've always kind of grown up around motorsport, and some very fond memories of me and my granddad. Watching the Formula One, sitting on this little toy Williams F1 car that I got for Christmas one year. And, I've got, massive motorsport fan forever, really. But I remember when I was at the very, very peak of my fertility journey, I was really depressed. I was really in a low place because I did the normal guy thing, buried my head in the sand, didn't want to accept that I was going through this. And kind of was in a spiral of depression, so much so that actually I just questioned my own existence. Should I even be here if I can't be a dad? All those kind of things popped into my head, which is a very common thing among, the fertility world. But a very, very dear friend of mine, Russ Mead, he said to me one day, Tobes, come on, let's just get you out. Let's go and do something fun. We can go and afford to do some go-karting. Why don't we just join some karting at a local track, Buckmore Park, and just go and have a blast? Let's go and have two friends, go and have some giggle, and forget about all of the issues that we're going through at the time. And he had his own, issues that he was going through. And so previous to that, I'd been to, a couple of like stag do's and a couple of birthdays at go-karting tracks, and would normally win. And I'm a very competitive guy. So obviously I went to this first race at Buckmore Park, which was one of the bigger series that Buckmore Park did at the time. And it was an hour-long race. And I thought, yeah, I'm going to turn up and just go and win. And honestly, Joyce, I turned up and started the race. And I've finished almost last. I was absolutely dreadful at this, which comes as a bit of a surprise after kind of the success I've had since then. But actually, that gave me a newfound determination, because my fertility journey was kind of, I felt a bit out of control. I weren't able to control potentially the outcome. But here I was at a go-kart track that I was going to go to every single month. And actually I could, work on my fitness. I could work on, driving better. And I was channeling all of this negative energy into something really positive. So each month I was chipping away, getting quicker and quicker. And in 2018, I was crowned the Buckmore Park I podiumed on the Buckmore Park Championship, which was amazing. Won a couple of races. I think I was second or third in that series. And then I was crowned Buckmore Park Driver's Driver of the Year, which is a hugely prestigious award. You've got Le Mans winning drivers on there, such as Mike Conway, who's recently won Le Mans 24 Hour. So I was so proud that I'd won this award. But that was the same year that Katie and I had two failed rounds of IVF. So it was a really kind of, yes, we were very happy about this racing thing, because that was great, but also very, very sad that we'd just lost our 2 rounds of IVF. But I got spotted by a sponsor in the early part of 2019, and he suggested that I need to look at racing seriously, because I just started karting a couple of years. I've now been competing against guys that have been karting from their childhood, and here I was kind of with this success in go-karting. And I was like, yeah, kind of just shrugged it off. But he invited me along to Brands Hatch, have a go in a race car, which, you know, was a dream. Like that was amazing. I'll never forget that moment. And he said to me, look, Tobes, you really, really need to consider this as an option, because if you're not taking this opportunity up, you don't know what could be ahead of you. And I think you've got real potential to have some success in motorsport. So I consulted with a lady called Jess Shanahan, who runs a mentorship program to help drivers understand the value of sponsorship, because I didn't have no money to go racing. It's a hugely expensive sport. So I wanted to learn how I could raise a budget, because obviously I had to raise, 5 figures in this first year. It's a large amount of money. And I wanted to make sure there was value for any sponsors on board. But during that time, I was obviously with Fertility Network UK. They were supporting me through my fertility journey. And I felt like I had an opportunity, because I felt like motorsport kind of saved my life. It was kind of like that kind of place where I could kind of escape it and give me this purpose. So I thought, you know what? Why don't I make this an opportunity to actually raise awareness for fertility? A really scary step, because I hadn't talked publicly about this before. A close knit of friends and some family knew about my journey, but that was kind of it. So I wrote out to the media, got a budget from various sponsors that I'm, very grateful for their support. And I got a phone call from the BBC, and the BBC wanted to do an interview with me about my campaign, Racing for Fertility. And honestly, Joyce, I was so scared, because I was thinking, right, this is it now. If I do this, this is it. It's going out to the world. So I agreed to it. I met the TV crew at Brands Hatch and created this campaign, had the interview. It went out, aired that evening. And I remember sitting at home watching it, like cringing, going, oh my God, this is so scary. But the response I got was amazing. I got so many DMs on Instagram, Facebook, and, text messages, people that knew me that had no idea. And they thought it was a really brave decision that I made. And so many reached out that they were currently going through the fertility treatment, or had been through, and they were grateful that I'd actually kind of raised this awareness. So that was the very start of the campaign in 2019. And since then, I've just really, really focused on pushing myself to be better on track, because the more success I get on track, the more media presence I get, and therefore that helps raise the campaign even bigger, which ultimately helps out individuals and couples going through a fertility journey. So we get now commentators on ITV4 talking about fertility. We get commentators at the racetrack talking about fertility. We get fans now talking about fertility, which is amazing, because we're just reaching out to so many people. And along the way, I've had endless amounts of people that I've supported now through this. And the goal now is to go global, is to, we've become a British champion once. I'm currently racing as a Porsche Cayman Sprint Challenge driver in the GB series, hoping to win this championship this year with all the luck that I can get. But each trophy and each championship really is about kind of lifting that for the couples that have gone through a really difficult time. This is not about me racing. This is about me raising awareness for those people. So in short, yeah, it's been mad, and I hope we can continue it. And it wouldn't be possible without all the amazing sponsors that I've got, and the trust they have in me and in the campaign and what we're trying to achieve, really.
Wow, Toby, that's so amazing and so inspirational. And thank you so much for doing this, because male infertility is really not talked about. I think when you started, really nobody was talking about it. So you really
No,
did.
that's right.
Yeah, you really started something that it is snowballing now, but it's really important. And people really respond to these real life stories. My international reproductive health group, we are going to be recording some people telling us their real stories. Actually, you'll be one of the people we'll ask to come on, because that people can relate to that. And being like you are a celebrity is, I think, even more important, because it gets the message out to so many people. So I know that you and Katie have been together since you were 15, and
Yep.
you do have a success story now, but I'm going to let you say this. So you've touched on a few things that happened, but if you'd like to tell us a little bit more about your specific fertility journey.
Yeah, so our journey lasted almost 7 years in total. It was a bit of a rough ride. So we did the typical thing. We kind of waited to have a family until we're kind of financially stable. I had a good job. Katie was ready. And we also lived a little bit in our early 20s, you know, did some traveling and some fun things, get that out of our system ready so that we could just fully concentrate on having a child. And sort of at the age of 25, we sat down and we were very excited. We always wanted children, and this was the time that felt right for us. And 12 months into trying naturally, we didn't have any success, not a sniff of a pregnancy. Kate had a couple of late periods, but nothing really that suggested that we were ever pregnant. And it was a bit of a weird time because we'd gone from at the start, being very excited, and over the course of that year, things got a bit more like, oh, this is a bit rubbish. Sex felt very planned. It was difficult, it was challenging because it went from love to we need to do it now, and the pressure of that was a bit strange. And I think that's really quite common in a lot of couples that that start this journey and don't have success, and that builds its own little pressure in a relationship. It causes stress for the male to kind of perform on the spot, and it was a really difficult time for us. But we then went on to our GP. Immediately referred to a local NHS fertility clinic, which was gynecology led. So the focus was very much on Katie. I had a basic semen analysis that showed that I had, everything pretty average, but my morphology was always a little bit under average. But I was told that wasn't much of a concern, and the focus was just turned to Katie, and she went through endless amounts of tests. The poor thing was like a little lab rat. I felt so sorry for her after what she went through. We tried Clomid. We tried a couple of treatments that we hoped would work. And month by month, we went through lots of hope to her period come in, and then obviously the sadness that came with that. And then we got to it was 3 years. It was suddenly here we are 3 years in, and we were then referred to an IVF clinic after kind of qualifying for NHS funding round, because we didn't have much money. It was going to be difficult for us to pay for IVF, but we would have begged, borrowed and stole to do it. But fortunately, we did have some NHS funding rounds, which we qualified for 2 rounds in our area. So we whizzed off to a clinic, and we met with the consultant, and we were told at the time we were pretty much textbook IVF cases. We were young, fit, healthy. There was nothing really to suggest there were any issues. And we were kind of not promised, but we were kind of told that actually this is going to work, and we will have a child. And we left that consultation with honestly we felt so elated knowing that we were going to get this help, and we're going to come out of here with a baby, despite the fact this is very now a clinical thing. We wanted it to be a moment of romance rather than a clinical thing. But we were full of hope. So we followed the first round of IVF, and unfortunately that was unsuccessful. We had, I think, 8 embryos, all fertilized, all looking really good, until about day 5 where they started collapsing. So we were a bit kind of like, oh, it's a bit sad, but we had one transferred, and sadly, 2 weeks later it didn't work, and we had the sadness of that really to deal with. But we soon picked ourselves up. We had a couple months off, and then we went for a second fresh round, with the hope that perhaps it was just one off. We were told that can be quite common in fertility, and the second round normally is a bit more successful. And it was pretty much the same story. We came away with that one with another miscarry, and Katie and I decided that we really need to take a break, because we were into 4 years at this point, and we were just really down, depressed, and didn't know where to turn. And that's when I was obviously doing all the go-karting and becoming a racing driver. And that pairs nicely with kind of the journey of motorsport. So while I was going through this year out of fertility, which was in 2019, we just took a break, to discover Katie and Toby again and have some fun again, and kind of bring back the relationship that that we once had, and we didn't want to lose who we were. So we went out for dinners and treated ourselves a little bit more, which was nice. It was nice just to put it to bed for a little bit. But along the way, I met lots of people that work in male fertility, such as Ian Stones, Michael Close, he runs a company called Logix Fertility. I met the wonderful Jonathan Ramsey, who I absolutely adore. He's a great guy. And the attention actually turned to me that actually I might be the cause of the problem, which was a really scary concept, because as a man that's been told this whole way, you're fine, don't worry, after we've been through so much, suddenly it's like, hang on a minute, am I actually the problem here? So I had a DNA fragmentation test done, basically to look at the sperm and see if the DNA is damaged. Is the DNA any good? And that test came back really, really bad. It turned out that I had really, really high levels of DNA damage in my sperm, which was really really tough news to get, because until that point I wasn't the problem, or so we thought. The focus was all on my partner, and now bang, here we go. Like, this is now my problem. However, I was diagnosed with a varicocele, so an enlarged vein of the testes. And I always used to have dull aches and stuff after going for a run, but I kind of did the man thing and just go, it'll be fine. It's just, I'm sure it's nothing. I was aware of a lump there, and, it's okay, nothing to worry about. But Jonathan Ramsey did a physical examination and was like, that's not cancer, which is good news. But it's a varicocele, which could be causing the high levels of DNA fragmentation. So he suggested to me and Katie that it would be worth looking at a varicocelectomy to have this varicocele kind of removed, if you like. And we went away and had to think about our options. But Jonathan gave us a very realistic outcome that this would help improve my DNA frag. Not necessarily guarantee a baby, but at least it would be helping my sperm to be manufactured a little bit better, so they're going to be a little bit healthier. So off I went in the December of 2020, actually, after the kind of pandemic era, to have this varicocelectomy. And I remember after the surgery, I was in my little private ward, because we pay privately for that. And I remember literally blubbing to myself, literally like in bits, because I was on my own. Katie wasn't able to come into the hospital. And this amazing nurse came in, and he basically was like, "Tobes, are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, man, I'm just, this has been years of waiting. And actually, I feel like this feels like a really positive thing, that I've actually got something done that's going to help us." But literally, it was like cork out the bottle. I was just in bits in my bed after the surgery. I remember ringing Katie saying, it's all done. I hope it's going to be the what we need, and fingers crossed. But we knew at that point we've now done everything we can for potentially, a pregnancy in the future, and fingers crossed it was going to work, but we didn't know for sure. So 3 months after that, we booked in to see Jonathan Ramsey again to have some retests, to check if it was a success. And jovially, I remember chatting to Katie one evening about a week or two before, and said, "Oh, could you imagine if we cancelled the appointment just because we've fallen pregnant naturally? Just trying to cope with it a little bit easier." And Katie was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, whatever," sort of thing. Fingers crossed, but it's not gonna. It's a bit too soon. And honestly, Joyce, days after, Katie said, "Look, I feel a bit strange. I feel a bit weird." And I looked at her and said, "Something's different." And I could just sense something felt different. And I was at work that day. I got home at about 8 o'clock at night. And it was on my mind all day. So I went off to a local supermarket, bought a couple of pregnancy tests, and I did it in absolute cognito, like I was buying something really naughty, because I didn't want anyone to see me buying a pregnancy test to then question, "Are you pregnant?" Because that would have been a really complicated story, and I just didn't have the energy for that. I just wanted to get home to Katie. So I tucked it at the bottom of this bag, out I whipped, got home, and we did this pregnancy test like 8:30 at night. And Joyce, it came out positive like almost immediately. And it was just the most wonderful thing. We literally were in tears on the bathroom floor for like half an hour. We had all of this plan that if we ever fall pregnant, we'd go and see our parents and, do it all properly and talk to them about our pregnancy. But we couldn't even wait. We literally rung our parents and was just like screaming down the phone that we're pregnant. And this was the first time we ever was properly pregnant. And 9 months later, our little boy Oliver was born, and we became parents, which was just insane. And I'm so overwhelmed even to this day that even happened, and very grateful to be a parent. But it just shows the importance, really, because our journey was quite like many of our age and other age groups, that the focus was all on the female. Keep doing IVF, keep doing ICSI, and eventually you can fall pregnant. But for us, that wasn't the case. We had unexplained infertility, but actually I just wasn't checked and tested. And once I was, I then got to find out actually I was a problem, that there was something that could be fixed. And then we had natural conception, which actually is really beautiful, because we planned on having a natural conception. And, if we'd had a pregnancy through IVF, that's great, because we'd have had our baby. But actually there was something extra we got back, which was, we've got a memory now of a moment of romance, and we had a natural conception, which means that in future, if we want more children, one would hope that we would have more success naturally. And actually that's better for future baby planning. We haven't got to worry too much about the cost of, more fertility treatment, hopefully. So yeah, it's been a mad journey. It's been a very mad journey, Joyce. And, I just want to keep sharing it and spreading the word because more guys need to be checked.
Toby, you made me cry. So those people watching this on YouTube, they can see that my eyes are all red now and I've got tears coming out of my
Joyce.
eyes. I think I'm crying. I'm crying for several reasons. I think one of the reasons I'm crying, I went through 7 years of IVF, and you reliving your story. I think anyone that's been through this, whether they have a child or not, when they hear other people talking about their journey, it brings back so many emotions. So for me, it brought back so many emotions. But your story brings up so many issues. You were young, any IVF clinic or fertility specialist who has a couple in their mid-20s come to them, they're like, wow, this is, most people come to the clinic when they're in their late 30s. But you did,
Yeah.
but at that age, in your mid-20s, after trying for a year, over 90% of people should be pregnant. But as you were aware that you weren't, and you did all the right things. You went and started getting checked, because I think that's one of the obstacles when people know when should we start getting on this treadmill of fertility testing. And as you explained, it's not easy. It's really, really hard. And as you said, more so for Katie. But I think one of the main, I mean, there's many things I could look, we could talk about, but I think one of the main things is the fact that it's so common not to check the man. And I'm in my view, I'm sure you agree, every man should have that check of their testicles, that physical examination, which doesn't take very long. It takes minutes, really. But you really showed that looking at a sperm sample, which so many people rest so much faith on, really doesn't tell us a lot. I've always said that. Anyone working in this field would always say, just looking at your sperm count really doesn't answer everything. If something's wrong, if it's low, or you said about the morphology, it really is a bit of a fuzzy test. But if you just look at that sperm sample, if it's okay, it means, okay, there's not something obviously wrong, but it doesn't mean that it's fertile and that you could have a child. So the fact that you had the right people on board and got it sorted is, it's absolutely amazing. And before we go on to talk about more about the work you're doing now, so what's it like being a dad? You've got a little boy. I've got 3 IVF boys. Mine are much bigger. What's it like being a dad?
Oh, it's wonderful. It really is. Obviously, it lends its whole new challenges ahead of you that you don't even realise until the moment comes. But yeah, it's really wonderful, and it's I'm just so grateful every day to wake up to Oliver and just share all the experiences that I'm going through now with with all the racing stuff, and he's growing up with this mad world that I'm in. Poor thing. But equally, it's very strange because I remember when Oliver was first born and going out to walking in the town with a pram and people congratulating us. It was lovely. It was of course lovely, but we had this really weird kind of almost guilt that maybe there's other people out there that are looking at us like, oh, look at them, they're lucky to have a baby. And because we felt the same, we would walk through the town and just see babies everywhere, and it was almost like in your face. So I've always been quite conscious of that. I like to, obviously, of course, I love to celebrate Oliver's here, and I love having him. He's a wonderful little child, but equally, I kind of am quite careful not to celebrate it too much because I'm aware that actually it's quite triggering for some people. And I just want people to understand that even though now I am a parent and I've had success, it really doesn't change the way I feel about the fertility world and really what I want to change. And I just hope it inspires people to actually get, their husbands checked, or, the guys to get checked out, because quite frankly, it's changed my life for the better, which I'm very grateful for. And I do know there are people out there that unfortunately didn't have that opportunity, and they've just got to the menopause and then became childless, not by choice. And it could have been completely different should the man have been checked. So this is such an important topic because us guys, we don't talk about it, which is what I'm trying to change. In the medicine world, there is lots of care and love for their patients, and I really believe that. But there needs to be more done. And there's so many good technologies out there now that can check for these particular conditions that are actually relatively inexpensive. And when I look at our cycle, we've effectively wasted 2 rounds of NHS funded fertility treatment. What's that cost? A couple, 10 grand, say. And for the sake of, I think it was a few £100 to have a consultation and these additional checks done, which has then lent to say that actually I can fall pregnant naturally. And those NHS rounds could have actually gone to someone that perhaps did actually need it, because IVF is still a needed treatment. And for some people, it is definitely something they need to be pursuing. But we've kind of wasted that funding. And I'm really keen now to kind of go to government and explain my story and change the way that the whole policies are made, because women are just immediately made the blame, which I think is really sad and unfair, because in 50% of the cases it is male factor. So if the NHS are spending money on testing the woman so thoroughly, let's get the guys done at exactly the same time before we even think about IVF, because if there's something that can be changed, and there's plenty of research papers out there now. I'm still trying to muddle my way through the scientific language. It blows my mind with that sort of stuff. But there are papers out there now that do talk about DNA frag, varicocele, oxidative stress. These things are far more bigger to build a picture than just a sperm semen analysis. And if you can then get treated and have a pregnancy naturally, surely that's got to be the better way, surely. And if more couples can have that, then we're onto something good, really, I think.
Yeah, and I think, as I said, you've highlighted so many issues there, and as you said, half of infertility is due to the man, and some of it's unknown. We're not. I normally say different people use different figures. I normally say about a quarter's the male, a quarter's the female, a quarter's both. So that means that half is male, and then there's about a quarter that we just haven't got to the bottom of yet. But as you said, with that examination happening nearer the time, at the beginning, it would have saved you so much, you and Katie so much trauma, but NHS funding, etc. And I think, you summed this up. We just blame the woman, unfortunately. And I've got some colleagues who are doing some research on male infertility and the treatment that men go through. And I know that one of their sayings is, we forget about the man in the room. That when, as you said, you go through the treatment, oh, your semen analysis, okay. Oh, it's the woman. Let's just start prodding, poking, testing, everything else, the woman. And that's really, really got to change. We've got to do more testing of both people, certainly the man, and really get to the bottoms of this. But you have really been one of these people, as I've also tried to be, but you've done it beautifully, where you've turned this negative situation round to something that's really positive in many ways and is really helping so many other people. And for men, this is so, so important. So you've been, as you said, you've been working with Fertility Network UK and been campaigning for more education on male infertility. Do you want to tell us more about that?
Yeah, so I teamed up with Fertility Network UK for the Racing for Fertility campaign, and just like you said, I wanted to create a campaign that was actually quite positive, because I think we can all sit here with our violins and make it a bit of a sob story, etc. And at the time, obviously, I wasn't a parent and I had no concept of being a dad, because I didn't know what the problem was at the time. But I really, really wanted to make it a positive thing, because us guys, we're a bit rubbish at talking. And if there's something that's quite negative, guys normally switch it off in their brain, put it to the back, and then focus on something else. And when the Racing for Fertility campaign started, it was an opportunity for me to really switch it on its head and go, guys, just come and have some fun racing. I'm raising awareness for fertility. And if we end up talking about it, great. And if not, and we talk about cars and petrol and tyres and all the good stuff, then at least then we've got something we can chat about in a fun environment. And I think when guys know someone else has gone through fertility treatment, guys might not necessarily talk about it, but the fact they know each other going through it, there's kind of little brotherhood nod that's like, I'll get you. I know exactly what you're feeling like. And if you don't end up talking about fertility and you talk about some fun, then that's cool. But 9 times out of 10, we eventually get on to talk about fertility treatment. And I think the campaign that I started, and it was highlighted by the BBC that I'm in an environment in motorsport where it's known to be quite macho. Try to not show weaknesses. All about being strong, brave. Risking our lives on circuit. It's a dangerous sport, right? But here I am talking about something that is perceived as something unmacho. You lose your masculinity if you're infertile. Those kind of typical sort of taboos and stigmas, and it's far from the case. Motorsport is, of course, a dangerous sport, but I'm Toby and I'm just a normal person. And also fertility shouldn't be emasculating it. We should be proud actually that we've got, yes, we've got an issue, but there are many other men out there, and rather than thinking you're the only one, because that's how I felt like I was the only guy going through this. Actually, when you start talking to more men and more couples and more people, suddenly you realize, actually, oh yeah, we had an IVF baby, or oh, my son actually is going through fertility treatment now, and the conversations that come from that are really great. And so the campaign Racing for Fertility has been pretty overwhelming. Obviously I initially started out just to raise awareness. That was the plan. But since then, it's boomed into something way bigger. So obviously I'm now working with Fertility Network UK on lots of things called fertility in the workplace. So we're basically helping introduce policies within the workplace to support couples going through fertility journeys, which is brilliant, because that's a very much needed thing. We're opening up conversations to many people, not just in the UK, but actually Europe and worldwide so far have had reach, which is madness. And then also companies that have been sponsoring the campaign, they've actually, slightly off topic, but they've actually helped grow their companies to employ more staff, because they're actually engaging in something quite fun with regards to the fertility angle. So their staff feel more cared for, loyal, etc. They're attracting more staff. So their companies are growing, which is great, which builds an economy in its own right. And they're able to scream from the rooftops about this campaign, which is brilliant. So, this little acorn of an idea in 2019 that I was absolutely so scared. I've almost flipped a coin about should I or shouldn't I do this? And I'm so glad I did, because the ripple effect it's having out on so many people is quite something. And, it's not all me. I've got a great team behind me of people that help me out with all this. And it just blows my mind every day that, I get little DMs now of pregnancy announcements, and, for the guys that I've supported and helped out with. Joyce, honestly, I can't believe that it's all become what it's become. And I just hope it can continue, because it is we're really onto something, I think.
I want to thank you, Toby, from everyone in the fertility field, because without people like you, we can't raise awareness. And it's just, your work has been brilliant. Absolutely. I've followed you for years.
Oh.
And one of my PhD students is doing a project on male fertility, really centered around education, which is exactly what you're doing. And you helped us several years ago with some great advice about how we can try and do that. But one of the issues we found in our work is men are still reluctant to discuss this. So we did a survey that we had thousands of women reply to, and we had the similar one for men, and we had just over a few hundred people respond. So you have got your team and Fertility Network UK and everyone else who comes on board with this. It's a big challenge to get men talking, but you started and you're growing. So just please keep going. We've got to try and make this normalised and make men feel comfortable about sitting in the pub and talking about their sperm or varicocele, or and for male cancers as well. Again, if people don't talk about it, they don't know what's normal, and they just put things away in a cupboard and think, oh, I've got a little lump there, but I'm just not going to think about it. Having those conversations can help men in all aspects of their health with regarding their reproductive system. So it's such important work. So thank you so much
No,
for doing this.
no, it's very.
You've
Yeah, it's
also
very, very kind to you. Very kind to you, Joyce. So there's a bit of delay in the thing then. Yeah, very kind to you. I mean, but coming, just touch on the cancer and the health thing. Fertility is life changing in respect that, if you have a child, that's life changing. If you don't, that's also life changing. This is a big thing, but also things like cancer. If guys are a bit embarrassed to go and have a physical examination, and I was when I saw Jonathan Ramsey for the first time, I was really nervous about someone feeling my testes and having a little look and stuff. It is, but I remember how much my partner went through when she went through all her observations, and I just thought, do you know what? For the sake of literally a minute, it will help identify a problem. And the lump that I had there, I didn't know if it was cancerous or not, and I had it there for a long time. And would that have been cancer? It could have been quite life threatening for me. And we did things like there's lots of prostate campaigns right now about kind of guys getting checked out for prostate cancer. And that's becoming a younger thing now. People of a younger age are starting to get issues like that, and we just need to be empowered to talk about this. And hopefully I can kind of trailblaze that path to help guys feel a bit more empowered to go and get checked and treated, because ultimately if you don't, the outcome could be far different, and that might be a dad or not dad, or it could be potentially life-threatening in terms of if you've got a condition as such as cancer and you've not had it checked and it's gone too far, then there is a life-threatening problem there. So this campaign is far bigger than just fertility. I think it's just about getting guys to be confident and surround yourself with people that are genuinely there to help you out. And so many professionals in this space really do want to help women out, and I'm very grateful that industry exists, because I wouldn't have Oliver otherwise.
I know, and I recently heard of a friend of mine who died a few months ago. He got diagnosed with prostate cancer at the beginning of COVID. Didn't go for his checkups during COVID, well, for the last few years, and then it had spread, and he died. So and he's young. He was young. So we've got to raise this awareness, and you'll be really pleased to know that we've been doing a lot of work with schools. And when I started giving talks in schools, I called them fertility education. But then I soon realized that was really not what I was trying to do. What I wanted to teach was reproductive health education, and also make sure that everyone was aware this is not a women's problem. For reproductive health as well, we've got to include everything. So the Teacher's Guide is actually out for consultation at the moment, until the end of May. I think this podcast might come out when it's finished. But I have included in there some slides about male reproductive cancers, so prostate cancer, testicular cancer, etc., so that in schools we can start to get guys aware. I mean, I also know a teenager who got testicular cancer when he was 18. So boys have got to be aware that they do need to check, and if they find a lump, I know it's worrying, but getting that awareness there, and it needs to start in schools for sure. So you also are involved with the HIM fertility campaign. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so the HIM fertility campaign is an arm of Fertility Network UK, really. So the amazing Rod Gilbert did a TV documentary, which he branded HIM Fertility. It's his beast, really. And he quite bravely did a whole campaign of his own fertility journey, created the brand around it, and to try and raise awareness. And at the time, actually, on the documentary, him and his team did some research about male factor fertility awareness, and is there support groups, and found nothing. And it was right at the time that I was just starting my bits and pieces with the charity. And obviously, it really was, the landscape for fertility and male fertility support was like zero everywhere. And he created HIM Fertility. The documentary went out, and he didn't want it to end there. The agency that had it were prepared to pass it on. And the charity, Rod and I had a meeting about Fertility Network UK, kind of taking ownership of that HIM Fertility campaign, so we can continue it and keep it moving forward. Rod is still very much a part of that. He joins a support group monthly with us, where we kind of support men on a monthly basis, talking all things fertility, and just create an online space really for guys just to come on and chat. And quite often you find that guys will end up on there because their partner's gone, go on, get yourself on there. And they might have the cameras or their microphones muted, which is fine. And it's quite interesting because you find by half an hour to an hour in, they used to only be an hour sessions. Now they're like 2.5 hours. People turn their cameras and microphones on and go, Tobes, can I say something? And I'm like, yeah, of course. And they're like, honestly, this is like a breath of fresh air, because we've set up the group to be, when we host it, we've kind of just said that we just wing it. There's no real agenda other than the fact we're just here for guys. And whatever we talk about, whether that's racing, football, fertility, nuts, going to get yourself checked out, the difficult problem of producing a sample in a box room when you can hear, people wander around outside, all the difficulties that we face. And we just go with it. And however the night goes, we just kind of help support people. On there, guys have come along and they've found out that they've got problems of their own. And we've helped sort of counsel them through, their mental challenges. and sort of steered them of where to go next, really, because we've had guest speakers on, such as Jonathan Ramsey, that have given really educational pieces around male factor fertility, and then guys then get educated of what's to do. Because I think what happened is when you go through a fertility journey, and it's probably, is quite common for most people, is that you just feel like a rabbit in the headlights. There's this new lingo that you've got to learn, and you're like, what the bloody hell do I do? Where do I go next? So it's nice to be able to offer some sort of education to help guys understand what the terminology is, what options are out there for people. And we get lots of people come back and sharing their wonderful news, and some people obviously have bad news, and we're equally there for them as well. But it's just about just getting a bunch of guys on a Zoom chat, having a chat, and see where the night goes, really. And it's been lovely to host. Actually, been very, very lovely.
Again, thank you, you and Rod, so much. I've seen the documentary, and I think I cried in that as well. But seeing the guys in the pub over a beer, and just having a laugh, and then talking about sperm. But I mean, Rod did say he was reluctant and nervous at the beginning about starting this campaign and getting things moving. And I can see, you both of you have gone into a space where nobody has stood up and said, "Hey, this is me. It's some of you. How can we help each other?" So, absolutely amazing. Thank you both so much. It's brilliant. So have you heard people say, why didn't anyone? So I'll do that again. I'm a bit overcome by everything you said. Have you heard people say, why didn't anyone tell me this? Which is the title of this podcast, because I've heard it. Many of us have heard it so many times. And what did they say?
I've heard that many times. I've heard that so much because of the journey that I've been on, the male factor fertility journey. I've heard so many people, find out that they've got maybe varicocele, and they've just said, "Oh, we'll just do ICSI." We'll just crack on, do some more ICSI cycles, and they've had that's it. That's all they've gone. And when people have found out about my story and understood that there's actually a DNA fragmentation test, there's oxidative stress tests that could be available, a physical examination. The amount of blokes go to me, bloody hell, why hadn't someone told me this before? It's madness. And I think actually it's probably way more common in the male fertility space than it is actually the woman's space, because typically a woman will go through quite a lot before they go through an IVF cycle, especially if they're going to go through the NHS system, because there's lots of qualification sort of tests and exams that will be done to get the funding for it. But us guys, crikey, we're left in the dirt. We're just effectively felt like a sperm donor. So that phrase I hear, unfortunately, all too often. And I'd love that to be something we don't ever hear again. But there's a lot of work to come yet. But in the meantime, we're doing everything we can to help change that conversation, I guess.
Yeah, it's a phrase I wouldn't want to hear again either. And also in the school teacher's guide, we did include some information about male fertility decline, which people really didn't even collect data on until quite recently. We did, as we said, always blame the woman for everything. But now we know that even a male's preconception health or pre-pregnancy health, before you get your partner pregnant, can have a long-term effect on the health of the child. And then also the issues around male fertility decline. So we know that men now know that men over 40, their sperm's not quite so healthy. They might take it longer to get their partner pregnant. They also them and their partner can have a higher risk of miscarriage. And there are some issues that can happen with genetic abnormalities, slight increase in some genetic diseases, and also a risk with things such as autism. And it's something that, we've certainly swept under the carpet for decades, and it's only just coming to light. So it's really important to balance this and let everyone know, yes, infertility can result from the woman, but it's also equally from the man. And there are issues that we definitely need to help people understand and help educate them.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't agree more with that, to be fair. I think we often talk about IVF success, live birth rate. But the way I ever look at it is, here's my analogy. If I ever bake a cake or make a lovely dinner, I want the best ingredients possible. so that I get hopefully the nicest cake or dinner. And you treat yourself once in a while to a really nice piece of fillet, then you're going to get a lovely steak kind of thing. And I think when you look at fertility, I always think that if you can start off with the best ingredients, i.e. the best egg and the best sperm, then if you get a live birth, you've chucked everything at it that hopefully you'll have the most healthy baby. Now, of course, there's always going to be a risk of, various diseases and problems and genetic problems, etc., because that's just inherently how genetics work. But if you can avoid certain things, if for example, your DNA, your sperm DNA is super, super healthy, then you know that when that goes to the egg, you're giving the egg the best sperm that it could possibly get. And hopefully then that little baby is as healthy as it could possibly be. And I had a really interesting discussion recently with someone about the concept that actually you see people smoking, drinking, overweight, but they can have children. And that's true. We do see that. And that's very much something we try and counsel and support on, because it's quite frustrating when you're being told you need to quit drinking, need to stop caffeine, stop smoking, lose weight, all these things that, guys and women are told to try and help their conception. But actually, what we do know is that if you do try and eliminate those things, you're going to then have better ingredients to provide to the embryo, and then hopefully that will be a healthier child, and you're not going to then pass on some diseases and problems, etc. But coming back to the education part, when certainly my sex education as a child was very much how to put a condom on a banana, and also a room full of young teenage boys. It was, you would just try to install the fear of God that if you had sex with a woman without protection, you're going to have a baby and your life's over. And I still to this day, I remember that conversation and like, crikey, obviously I was with Katie at the time. We need to be dead careful because our life's going to be over if we have a child. But actually, there needs to be more education about family planning. Yes, you need to be delaying a child, because ultimately, if circumstances are right, it's obviously then difficult to raise a child. Not that it's impossible, but it's difficult. But there then needs to be more education about future family planning, because actually, if you can identify a problem when you're young, you may know that you might not have any sperm. And actually, if you don't find that until you're in your 30s, that could be quite detrimental to your relationships and the way life is, etc. And I think that would be a really hard thing to deal with. But something that's happening at the moment with the younger generation is young men in their 20s are trying to do everything they can to make themselves look more sexually attractive to their female counterpart, i.e. bigger muscles, nicer hair, all these kind of things that they're doing. And they're filling themselves with anabolics, false proteins. They're using hair dyes and, hair loss treatments, try and make a nice head of hair and stuff. And that's fine because they're trying to make themselves look more sexually attractive to their female counterpart, but they're absolutely destroying their fertility potential, so that if they then have a partner, the chances are that they're going to have a decreased rate of success for their own fertility journey if they want children down the line. So we need to do a lot more about that kind of education. Actually, stop following Only Way is Essex for your own sanity. Actually think about what impact that's having on your fertility journey, and I think that's a really, really important topic right now, because in the next decade or two, if this kind of thing continues, like you said, we're only going to see a decline get worse. And we know that we've got estrogenic chemical compounds in our diets these days, from things like BPA and plastics, drinking out of water bottles, and all the environmental things that can have an impact. And people don't realize that actually that has an impact on your health, but it absolutely hankers your fertility potential, especially among men, because obviously we don't want estrogen in our system, or as little as we can get. We want the testosterone to be strong. We want to be pumping out that good stuff. And if you've got more estrogenic compounds in your body, your testosterone's going to drop, right? And that has a huge lasting effect. But I didn't know about any of this prior to fertility treatment. And I do everything I can now to give myself the best possible chance of the future, really. And I want other people to understand that these are real factors and real issues that we face.
I'm so glad you brought that up, actually, because I'm more and more frustrated that we are creating products that are bad for our health. And I've turned 60 this year, and when you get to my age, you worry a bit more about your. Well, I've always worried about my health, but you worry a bit more about your health. And we're surrounded by everything. You go into a shop, there's sugar everywhere. Is sugar, which is so toxic. and doesn't help with obesity, and that affects our fertility. So again, in schools, we're trying to discuss the fact that we need to be very careful about what we eat and drink, and we need to exercise, we need to sleep well and help our body repair. And it's frustrating that, like you said, water bottles, once you've used them, those toxic chemicals can get in them. And many people reuse their water bottle, their plastic water bottle. So we are surrounded by these toxins. And I've got a great story that years ago, one of our very well-known mouse researchers, she does a lot of work on mouse embryology, and she moved lab, and she went to the new lab, new premises, and the mice were totally infertile. She kept mating them. They were the same mice and everything, and they just didn't get pregnant. And mice not getting pregnant, they breed really well. And after lots of research into why this was happening, she found out it was the cleaning fluid that was being used to clean the cages. So her bottom line was, don't be too clean. Don't use all these anti everything anti clothes wash. That's crazy. All this antibacterial and things. It can really affect our fertility. But all of these things can really affect our long-term health as well. So we need to do it for our fertility. We need to do it for the future of our children, but also our own health. We really must be really careful. And I just get frustrated that why are companies allowed to produce more things that are so toxic to us? So I'll get off my high horse now.
I know. Yeah, we could. This is like a new podcast. This one, yeah, it's so true, though, isn't it? It's so true. And there's so much that does affect our health, and that ultimately affects our fertility. But we also know that if you've got an issue with male factor fertility, there are studies out there now of future long-term health conditions, such as heart disease is even linked to it, isn't it? There's lots of these things going on. So if you can actually understand your fertility at a younger age, then hopefully you can actually figure out how to live a healthier life and how it actually benefits you in the long term, not just for the benefit of having a family. And like I say, it's a really important point to think about your own health.
Yeah, I hear so many people say, "Oh, well, we're going to try and get pregnant in a year or so, so we're going to start being healthy." You should always be healthy. You shouldn't have to spend a year preparing for a pregnancy and get healthy. Anyway, right? We could talk forever about fertility, but I want to finish now with a few questions, a bit more about you, because I really want people to try and lead the best life they can ever lead. And so my questions at the end of my podcast are a bit more about motivation and happiness. So what motivates you? You've done so much with your racing and your campaigning. What motivates you?
The biggest thing that motivates me is seeing other people happy. I've always been a bit of a people pleaser. And any of my close friends and family will say you're too busy trying to make other people happy. But generally, seeing other people happy makes me happy. So if on my mission I can do anything to make someone's happiness better, then that's exactly what I love doing, and that fulfills so much for me. I think the gift of giving is such a powerful thing. And if we could all live like that, then I think we live in a better planet myself.
So I think that nicely gets into the next question. So I think there might be some overlap. What makes you happy, and where is your happy place?
Yeah, I've pretty much answered it. But my happy place is the racetrack. I love to escape to motorsport. That really is my happy place in terms of my own inner self. I think when I go racing, living life on the edge in motorsport actually makes me feel most alive. And it's very weird. And I wish everyone could experience what I do in a race car. But when I'm out there racing my heart off, for fertility and, to raise awareness, when the car's on its edge and I'm close to having a big crash, that's when my mind is absolutely silent and all of my kind of worries and problems go away. And all I'm thinking about is being present. And I think, we talk a lot about kind of living in the present. And when I'm in a race car, nothing beats it for me. That's definitely my happy place.
Thank you. We haven't had that one before. And what advice would you give your younger self?
Wow, that's an interesting one. I think care less about what people think about you. I used to be very much that person that would always care about what people think of me, and I always kind of wasn't my true self when I was younger. I think I've learned to live more of my true self, and I guess just grab the balls by the horn and don't be scared of anything that comes in front of you, because life we're here for a short time, and if we can do something to help others be happier and yourself be happier, and if you think less about what the outcome might be and just get on with actually making something positive and good, then that will make a better future for not just you, but for everyone around you. And I think I held back a lot when I was younger. And so, yeah, just embrace every opportunity that comes in front of you.
Wow, I love that. I totally love that. So, Toby, that was absolutely amazing. Some of my guests at the end, I really want to give them a big hug. I'll give you a virtual hug. And we've never met
Oh.
in person. So hopefully sometime we'll meet in person. But thank you so much for giving up your time to tell us your story, and keep going with all the brilliant work and the success with your motorsport as well. And yeah, thank you so much.
Oh, Joyce, thank you so much for having me. Honestly, it's been an absolute pleasure. And it's been lovely to finally chat properly. And I look forward to when our paths cross and we actually meet in 3D and not in this 2D space. But yeah, thank you so much for having me. And I hope it's beneficial for your listeners.
I'm sure it will be. Thank you so much. Oh,
Take care.